Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another edition of Boxing Bananas brought to you by Fight Bananas, where we are crazy about fights. I'm your host, Ray, the business. I am here with my co-host, the professor himself, Mr. John Radford. What's going on, John? How you doing today?
Good, man. Good, man. How about you? Doing all right?
Doing all right, my man.
Ready for the
to talk.
fourth?
I'm ready for the 4th of July.
Good.
Yeah. Ready to kind of kick back, enjoy the day off. How about yourself?
Oh, man. Me too. Me too. Gonna get a workout in the morning and then probably be a little beach day. And then my dogs do not do well with fireworks. So we will be home in time to make sure that when fireworks set off, we're with the puppies. So,
Yeah. I hear you. Same thing. You know what I mean? They get
yeah.
all crazy with that.
Yeah.
But for everybody listening right now, if you want to enjoy your 4th of July, make sure first you subscribe to the Fight Bananas YouTube, and then I will give you permission to enjoy your day off tomorrow. But make sure also on Instagram you follow us at Boxing Bananas Official. Let them know, John.
Absolutely. At Boxing Bananas Official, we always put out the latest news and upcoming events happening in the boxing world. Also, we have a guy out in Anaheim right now that's going to be bringing you the latest and updated news from the Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz fight. Mr. David Van Auken with Fight Bananas is out there running the show for us, so he'll be sending us a whole bunch of awesome news, highlights, interviews, everything that you're looking for. And any other news that comes out during the fight week that they're there, because it is a boxing card. So you're going to see a lot of different, we're going to see a lot of updates, but check us out, follow us, come on, and then enjoy the show and your fourth.
Absolutely. So that being said, let's get into some of the fights. We had some fights over the weekend, especially in boxing. We had a big UFC over the weekend. We saw some good fights with that, but we also had some good fights in boxing. First of all, we had Mr. Bam Rodriguez facing off against Estrada. Did you catch the fight? Did you see the drama that ensued?
No, I did not see that. I did not catch that fight. I was stuck. I don't want to say I was stuck. I was watching, doing a watch along with a Fight Bananas crew for the MMA card for the UFC card. So I missed the Bam Bam fight. But I did catch a little bit of the Teofimo Lopez one versus Claggett. So, but yes, please dive into the Bam Rodriguez one and let me know exactly what went down.
Yeah, man. So this one, we had a little bit of back and forth, some good boxing drama. You know what I mean? A lot of people said this was kind of like the new guy taking on the old guy. And it definitely showed out for the fans. Jesse Bam Rodriguez is a guy who in those lower weight divisions has definitely been very exciting to see come up, rise, whatnot. And he has a good, exciting style and whatnot. And this is one of those fights, like I said, was really good for the fans because it was a back and forth. Bam hurt him, knocked him down, I believe, in the 4th round. And then in the 6th round, Estrada knocked Bam down. So, it's always a good boxing fight when you have good action and then both fighters get knocked down.
Yeah.
And then Bam went on to win via a 7th round KO with a body shot. So that was definitely a good one. My thing about this fight is that, people talk about Bam, like, what are you going to do next? Are you thinking about moving up, maybe fighting in a way? Because people want to see these big fights come together. And I feel like right now in the lower weight divisions, there's not really those big names out there. How do you feel about that?
No, I agree. I think everybody's trying to move up to certain categories, to certain weight classes. You don't ever see a lot of people move down. You know what I mean? No one wants to cut extra weight a lot of times.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of people move up, and there's a lot of there's a lot of phenomenal fighters in the low weight classes. Don't get me wrong, but just not a lot of namers in the sense of we see them a lot and we know their name because they're popular in the boxing realm, right? Usually the middleweights, and when I say middleweights, anywhere from 135 to 154, 160. Those eras are like where we have a lot of superstars, and then we have the heavyweight category that everybody keeps track of in a sense, right? So you don't see a lot of people going down to the fight, so they're trying to find their way up for their ability, like conducive to their body and their weight, to get to the highest weight category that they can in order to get the better fights, to get the better paydays. Because I feel like the higher you go up in weight, there's more opportunity for you in the sense in the weight categories, seeing for paydays and things like that. So
Yeah, most definitely. I hear a lot of people talking about they want in a way to go up and fight Gervonta. That would be him jumping up, I think, like 3 weight divisions at this point, or
yeah.
2 if Gervonta were to go back to 130. But with Bam, essentially, he would have to go up 2 weight divisions. The thing is, though, and nothing to take away from the fighters themselves, but I feel like in those lower weight divisions, it's easier to do because in boxing, you have so many weight divisions in those lower categories. I get it; it's
Mm-hmm.
a percentage of weight and whatnot, but I almost feel like it kind of dilutes the accomplishments a little bit because already, if you take the percentage of grown men out there, take the percentage that are boxing professionals, and then you say, okay, well, what's the average or like what's the median size of this adult man? You're gonna find a smaller pool in like the smaller gentleman category. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you stretch that across, 5, 6 different weight classes, and then from there you got 4 belts on top of that, that's where it's kind of like, all right, you know what I mean? Unless you have those super fights, people aren't really paying attention to it. So, like I said, I'm not to diminish anything from the fighters because, Jesse Bam Rodriguez is definitely doing his thing. And this is what boxing's about. You want to see good, exciting fights. At the end of the day, like without the fans, there is no sport. It will become just another specialty sport. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how there isn't really fans that much, mainstream fans for like kickboxing or
Yeah.
things of that nature. Even like jujitsu, there's
Agreed.
not a huge mainstream fan base. So unless boxing sticks to the main part of fighting and putting on exciting fight for the fans, it's gonna eventually like wean down into that, which I feel like it's taken a correction in the past couple years. We've spoken on that
Yeah.
most definitely.
Well,
But anything else to close out the talks about Bam Rodriguez and even like the lower weight categories?
no, I mean, everybody knows the monster is the king of the lower weight categories right now. So I feel anybody who thinks they have a shot at beating him is going to either go up to him, or if they're the heavyweight category and he's coming up, they might go down one just to see if they can, get him because he's the biggest draw in the lowest weight categories. You know what I mean? By far. So it makes sense trying to get to wherever he's at to take, to get that fight if that's what you're looking for. So.
Yeah, most definitely. So that being said, we had another boxing fight over the weekend. Somebody who is the number one at 140 pounds. I know some people want to argue that point, but as far as who holds the Ring Magazine title, which we've talked about on this program, essentially makes you the number one. You are the champion of the division. He proved that when he beat Josh Taylor. Is Mr. Teofimo Lopez himself. So Teofimo Lopez fought over the weekend. Let me pull this one up. Teofimo Lopez fought over the weekend, and he fought. Let's go back to this screen. He fought Steve Claggett. This was a fight that a lot of people didn't like because Claggett was a guy with a few more losses than people typically like to see that get a title shot. He was coming off of a few victories in a row. I think it was like 5, 6 victories, maybe even more. But they were against kind of like lower competition and whatnot. And then we see the scorecards that reflected basically a shutout right here.
Yeah.
Now, the main criticism that people are giving Lopez is that is he's supposed to be this monster that he says he is if he's supposed to be this power puncher that he says he is, when you're essentially in a fight that you on paper are supposed to win like this. If you don't get a knockout like that, people are critical. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I agree. I think what he's starting to realize is that I don't think a lot of people understand that. Like also look at the age difference. Let's look at this. He's 26. He's 35, right? He's on the end of his, Claggett's on the end of his career, clearly, right?
Yeah.
Teofomo's still at 26, still has a lot of gas in the tank, a lot of, championship rounds left in him. I think though, what he's learning is power punching doesn't always translate up. And it does in some cases, it doesn't in a lot of cases. In some cases, if you're naturally already a bigger guy and you cut a lot of weight, your power may diminish a little bit. But if you're already a natural bigger guy and you are moving upwards, like let's take Daniel Cormier, for instance, right? I know this is MMA, but at 205, he wasn't knocking a lot of people out. At heavyweight, when he decided to stay at heavyweight and fought people, at heavyweight, he was actually knocking people out. He was hurting them with punches and strikes where he wasn't doing that at 205. And I think it's just because he's a naturally bigger bodied person, and that played into his knockout power a lot. Or so when he cut that weight out, it didn't translate as much. And I think that Tio had that pop, has that one punch power at 130 and 135. The higher you get up, you're going to get guys that have taken harder punches, that can take harder punches, especially in boxing, that can be there and stay in front of you longer. And your power may not translate to the one punch, put you to sleep power. It may now translate to the, I got to catch you clean, and then I got to get you out of there after I hurt you power, like type of stuff. So I think he's starting to realize that, because a lot of the highlights that I saw, I didn't get to watch the whole fight, but I watched I watched 3 or 4 different highlight, breakdowns of it. He's getting walked down. And like, we're watching it right here. Yeah, he's touching the man. I'm not saying he's not out pointing. I'm not saying he's not even hurt him. That's a hurt shot, right? But that man is still, he's walking him. You know what I mean? He's doing that. Great. But normally at 130 and 135, he was getting people out of there with those punches, with big power like that. This guy's taking them and then turning around and still trying to walk forward. And yeah, Tio won. Tio outpointed him completely, won all those rounds. It was great. But I think he's not used to that. He's not used to hitting someone clean with a right hand like that, or a left hook to the body, or a left hook to the chin, and them just being slightly wobbled and staying in front of him. I think he's used to being able to put guys out. And now in this upper weight category, he's not putting them away with his power and his, athleticism prowess. I just think he's starting to realize that I'm going to have to be a better boxer all the way around and have that gas tank to be able to go those 12 rounds anytime I come across these bigger athletes.
Yeah, and I mean, I do slightly disagree with your point, but the thing is that I can't really disagree with it, because if you look at the record, I mean, it's kind of playing into your point. You know what I mean? So he's had his last fight at 135 was George Kambosos Jr. He lost that fight. He said that he had like a hole in his lung, something like that. He definitely didn't look like himself, but at the end of the day, George Kambosos showed out. I feel like that's a great story for George. But since then, at 140, he's now had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fights, and he only has 1 KO in those 5 fights. Where if you look at lightweight, he was KO'd Richard Comey in the second round. Decision. He went to decision with Lomachenko, which, I mean, of course.
Yeah.
KO, 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 KO. You know what I mean? So I definitely get your point. My thing with Teofimo, which is why I slightly disagree, because I feel like the power's still there. And I feel like I've heard this from other people as well, is that Teofimo seems to fight to the level of his competition.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
I agree with
So
you on
even
that.
when he was like getting walked down in the fight, it's almost like he's like letting it happen, because he knows it's like, all right, well, I'm in control here still. You know what I mean? He's getting walked down, but he's not uncomfortable in it. He's allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
that's kind of the issue I have with Teofimo, and we've seen that looking back on his boxer rec, right? He fought like that kind of against Pedro Campa, and then he ended up, getting the stoppage. He definitely fought like that against Sandor Martin. Sandor Martin is super tricky. And to the same point, I feel like sometimes he just goes in there without a game plan.
Yeah.
He's just like, oh, I'm better than you. I'm Teofimo Lopez. He's kind of drinking a bit of his own Kool-Aid. And then he goes in there and kind of just does what he tries to do, right? It says right here, Lopez down in round 2. I think in like the 4th or 5th round, 6th round, something like that, he was down again, but they called it a slip. But it was pretty much the same shot. It was like a check hook, put him down. So Sandor Martin, a lot of people thought Sandor should have won that fight. And, the scorecards here, Max DeLupa and whoever this guy is, Pasquale, those scores were a little bit different. But it looks like from there we had Josh Taylor. We had the Josh Taylor fight, and that fight was like a masterclass. He went in there and did
Yep.
pretty much. It looked like how he fought against um Lomachenko. Like when he fought
Yeah.
against Lomachenko, everyone was like, "Who is this guy, Teofimo? Like, what are we watching right now? This guy is dialed in. He's on point." Then when he fought, he lost to Cambosis. He had a fight against Campo, who it wasn't like the best showing of Teofimo, even though he did get the stoppage. Sandor Martin, people thought he lost, so everyone was saying, is he still that guy? And then he goes
Yeah.
out there and puts on a masterclass performance against Josh Taylor. So that Teofimo is still there. But I don't know that I can necessarily disagree with your power statement. I would like to believe you're incorrect. Let's go
I
there.
agree. I
I
understand
would
what you mean.
like to believe you're incorrect because I know that Teofimo's still there. And then one more point I'll make before I pass it on to you is that after the Josh Taylor fight, we saw his fight against Jermaine Ortiz, which I had the misfortune of deciding I was going to go to that live, and there was people walking out. Now, part of that was because the way Ortiz was fighting, he was fighting in a very not friendly to the fan style, which there's other people that fight like that, which we'll get into in the weekend preview. But that fight was another fight where, like on paper, as far as the boxing goes, I mean, that fight could have went to Jermaine Ortiz also, but I'm glad they gave it to I'm glad they gave it to Teofimo, even though if had I scored it, I might have not agreed with it. I'm glad they gave it to Teofimo because I don't know that you can reward that type of style, if that makes sense. And then we see this performance against Steve, a guy who, many people were saying has no business being in there with him. And, it is what it is. So
I mean, he clearly had business being in there with him because he didn't knock him down, right?
yeah.
And he didn't get him out of there. So he clearly was able to, like, he went 12 rounds. Yeah, it's a unanimous decision, but he clearly had business being in there. And I think you made the point right. I think he does play to the level of his competition, but that actually plays into my point about the power, right? Because if he plays to that level, he's not landing the shots that could get these guys out of here then, because he's not, whatever it may be. He doesn't have a game plan, like you said. He's coming in there overconfident, whatever it may be. He's not getting himself the opportunity to land those devastating shots the way he should if you're playing to the level of your competition. If you're that much better than your competition, one of my coaches used to say, you don't just step on an ant, you kill it with a sledgehammer. Like, you overdo it, right? You stomp them into, like, you make sure you break the ground underneath them that they're on, because they're not supposed to be here.
Or
So,
especially like even to add on to that analogy, like a spider. How many
yeah,
times have you tried to step on a spider and then you lift your foot up and then it starts running away? You're like, oh dang, like it must have went in the crevice of my shoe or something.
yeah,
And then now your girl's freaking out in the house. People are screaming, and those things are fast.
yeah.
So yeah, you gotta really stomp it. So yeah, I like that analogy.
I feel like he should definitely put the pedal down gas. It proved that he is who he is, because he's not. In no way am I knocking Teofimo Lopez. In no way do I think he's not a great boxer. He is a great boxer. He really is. And he's a great athlete, phenomenal. I just think, like you said, I agree with you on this. He drinks a little bit of his Kool-Aid a little bit too much. Excuse me. And I think he plays to the level of his competition when he could go out there to turn it up a little bit more than what he's doing and probably get him out of there, get these guys out of here, or have that a dominant victory that we're looking for. Like the one against Josh Taylor, the one against, the better performance that he put against, Lomachenko, all those things. He's had brilliant fights, and he had that run at 135 where he was putting people out. Comey, all these guys, he's putting them out, and those are former champions. So nothing wrong there. It's just, show us the consistency. Let's see it, man. Like, you have the talent to be great, to be this pay-per-view go-getter. But when you fight guys like Steve Claggett and you don't turn it up like you're supposed to and show us that you're this guy.
Essentially, he had to prove the haters wrong,
Yeah.
which in a shutout performance, you do. But to your point, where I get what you're saying, you need to stomp out the competition. And if you're leaving that meat on the bone that we like to talk about, where a lot of the times these knockouts they can happen from one punch, but it's harder to do that, right? If you really want to beat somebody up and get them out of there, you want to have that accumulation of just like just punishment. You know what I mean? So that's what can really, really help being able to stop somebody, especially in boxing. You know what I mean? And with the power that Teofimo has, he I feel like he can put on these performances, but maybe it's a good thing for him. You know what I mean? So then people will be more likely to try to take these fights against him. We definitely have seen some shakeups in the 140-pound division. You know, we have Pitbull Cruz is now champion. Liam Paro's now champion. And then on top of that, Devin Haney was the champion. They moved him to champion in recess because he essentially said, hey, I'm not going to fight. And little did we know when we watched the Gary Anton Russell versus Puello fight that was for the interim title, that now is elevated to WBC champion. So Puello's now the WBC champion. He now has to take on Sandor Martin as the mandatory. And then they're talking about something. The winner has to face Anton Russell again. WBC, you know, these people have their rules, whatever. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole. But a rabbit hole I do want to go down real quick, because, you know, I like to go down some of these like conspiracy rabbit holes, whatever. This one isn't really a conspiracy, whatnot, but kind of. Right. So I saw something on here. I saw something. Give me just a second. Let me pull this up. So you see this, right?
Okay.
So this is saying, it's talking about some of these guys. It's talking about Devin Haney, Tank, Shakur Stevenson, Teofimo Lomachenko, been lineal world champion. And I feel like this is kind of like hating on Tank, but at the end of the day, you know, this is criticisms. Like I like to say, you know, Tank is this guy that everybody puts on this pedestal. They like to say he's the new face of boxing, etc. But these are, you know, valid criticisms compared to these other guys. You look at the accomplishments. You know, been a lineal world champion, no. Unified, no. Ring, no. Which we said is the real champion of the division. Undisputed, no. Beating a reigning pound for pound fighter, no. It says Devin Haney's done all of that. I feel like part of that is referring to Lomachenko, so that's kind of one where you could almost put like an asterisk on there. And then Shakur Stevenson. But here's where I want to get into this with Teofimo. He's got yes, except for being an undisputed world champion. If you know where I'm going with this.
How is he not? I thought he got the undisputed when he beat Lomachenko.
So what it was similar to the WBA, where they have the regular title, which is a secondary title, and then they have their super duper title, which is the higher one, right? WBC decided that they were going to make this franchise champion. It's basically the same thing, but somehow in the boxing sphere, we're now calling whoever's the franchise champion not the real world champion when the real world champion is the world champion. You know what I mean? So it's like the WBA, but inverse, if that makes sense, which really makes no sense because Lomachenko was the one that held this franchise title. Some people call it the French fries title. And then they had given Devin Haney the WBC lightweight title, which at the time the criticism was that Devin Haney was an email champ, blah, blah, blah. When they gave Lomachenko the French fries title, the franchise title, I can't even not call it French fries now. The franchise title, they said, we are elevating him to, I mean, I'm no linguistics PhD here, but are we speaking the same language? Elevate means to bring somebody higher.
Yeah.
Now, my second point is before the Lomachenko fight with Teofimo, Mauricio Suleiman, the president of the WBC, was on record saying that whoever won that fight would be crowned undisputed champion. Why did he say that? Because everyone thought Lomachenko was going to win. There wasn't people, you know, thought, oh, you know, Teofimo's that guy, but they thought he was too young. He was like 23, 22 years old. They thought, no, he's not going to beat this guy. Teofimo goes up there, upsets Lomachenko and beats him. And then now all of the sudden we're reeling back and we're saying, oh, well, actually, no, Devin Haney's the real WBC champion. Am I living in crazy town here, or do I have
Yes.
a point?
Oh, you have a point. You're not living in crazy town. They're living in crazy town. They did that on purpose, and this is why people hate boxing.
Yeah,
This
the
is why
boxing
people
policy.
don't. I mean, there's no. Why would you do that if the guy that you're elevating is fighting for a guy for the undisputed for all of it? Whoever wins that is the undisputed. That's just what it is. It's just, I mean, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, when you go on record as the president of your own organization and say whoever wins this is going to be undisputed, and then later go, well, actually, nah, he's not really because Devin Haney. And I think the issue was, which plays now in hindsight perfectly because we see the way Devin Haney and Bill are,
Yeah.
was that Devin Haney and Bill were complaining, saying, oh, well, we're supposed to be the real world champions. Like they essentially almost had to sue the WBC to be able to get their title shot. And the reason why WBC was in that position is because, you know, they're a greedy organization that wanna just have people pay sanctioning fees. So they'll have somebody fight for the world title, and then the next weekend, or even vice versa, have somebody fight for an interim title in the same division when the champ just fought.
Yeah.
No, there's absolutely no reason for there to be an interim title on the line. And then there we go. It was similar to the sense of what we saw with the Puello situation, but in that case, it actually ended up working out. So that's my little rabbit hole of the day. I feel like Teofimo should go down in the history books as undisputed champion, and so should George Kambosos Jr.
I mean,
They
I think
should also be.
absolutely. And I think in our eyes and all the boxing fans, you're going to look at Teofimo Lopez as the undisputed champion. You're not going to sit there and say he wasn't. You know, at some point, we all know that he was. Like
I mean, you'd be
Lomachenko,
surprised, bro. I hear people talking all the time. Oh no, he never was. Blah blah blah. This and that.
whatever.
Yeah.
Stop it. Like, it's ridiculous. Let's also go. Let's also look at this picture you have here on the screen real quick. Let's look at that.
Yeah.
That the man, I guess I'm going to just be considered a Devin Haney hater, I guess, because this is what I'm going to. The man to the farthest left, Devin Haney, has a yes on every single category. But would you consider him the best boxer on that list?
Nah, I would say he should fight Shakur, which I don't think that's going to happen now because Devin Haney's a 140 pounder. I don't know if Shakur wants to go to 140. He said that he would, but who knows? Unless they fight, which, you know, better not be on pay-per-view. Then we won't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think the real testament is who's better, Gervonta or Lomachenko. We know who was better between Lomachenko and Teofimo because they fought. Even if Gervonta were to go up to 140, I don't know that he would go up to 140 and fight Teofimo without a weight hydration clause. You know what I mean? Because that's kind of his MO.
The best fight to make on this page is Devin Haney versus Teofimo. Like, in my opinion, the one that he should fight, because Devin Haney's gonna, like, he's 140.
As far as Teofimo's best fight.
Yeah, like that's the one, because they're both in the same weight category now. The other three guys are in the Davis, Shakur, and Loma are all in the same weight category right now. The other two are 140ers because that's where Devin Haney's at and that's where Teofimo Lopez is at. I think those two should actually go at it. Talking about that as well, Teofimo's next fight, well, he wanted Isaac Cruz, but he's recently stated that Isaac Cruz is actually trying to get the Gervonta Davis fight.
Of course. Right? You know what I mean?
But
we talked about that after the Gervonta fight. That's, you know what I mean? If they can't make the Lomachenko fight, which I don't even know if they're really trying to make that fight or they're just dangling the carrot. Because why would they not? Yeah, why would they not go, like I said, do like a 136-pound catch weight for the 140-pound title? Neither of them are, they're basically both lightweights. Even Cruz isn't a huge lightweight. So why would they not do that and sell that to us in the anticipation of, hey, we're going to sell you this next, kind of like what they did with the Hector Luis Garcia fight. You know what I mean? And then speaking of, we just found out, remember we were talking about Gervonta, people were saying he's a new face of boxing, et cetera, et cetera. He was talking about, well, I did 1.2, 1.3 million versus Ryan Garcia, but that's because he had the rivalry. He had the dance partner. My point the weekend before last or whenever it was that he fought was, okay, now that it's your name, the one that's selling the card, how many pay-per-views are you going to sell? Even with a boost of having a pay-per-view star like David Benavidez, who's now had 2 pay-per-views as your co-main event. How many pay-per-views are going to sell? the numbers finally came out. It was about 325 to 350,000 pay-per-views, which, to be fair, if you're going to call yourself the face of boxing, that's not a lot. You
No.
got Canelo, who's fighting Jaime Munguia, who, to be fair, nobody wanted to see. I mean, people were like, all right, well, watch this. This is, a good fight. And it was a good fight, especially on paper.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody asked for, like we were talking about before, that's a fight nobody asked for.
Mm-hmm.
So that one still sold 500,000. So Canelo is selling 500,000 in a fight that nobody asked for. When Tank is supposed to be the star, he even has a boost on the pay-per-view with another pay-per-view fighter and still can't really reach those numbers. So, John, you tell me who's the face of boxing.
I mean, it's still Canelo because the world in its own, like everyone in the world still knows Canelo as the boxing. I think American boxing, Gervonta Davis is the face of it right now. I think that
American boxing, yes,
American
I agree
boxing.
with you.
I think
100%. Yeah,
I think right now, like he's the guy that everybody wants to see, and I think now after this card that he just sold, maybe it is only 300 to 350 thousand pay-per-views that he sold. I think with the knockout, with the finish, with the unbelievable backflip off the top rope, like he was in the WWE. I think he's gonna get more pay-per-view buys now. Like I said, he's becoming the face of USA boxing, and I think we're getting boxing fans back to where they're excited about these cards. They're excited about the fights that are happening, and they're gonna buy more. It's just hard to pull them away from what the UFC has done because they're throwing a pay-per-view in your face every week with at least some notable names on it, with an undercard that has notable names on it. You know what I mean? And with the boxing ones, we're getting fights and we're getting some super fights, but we've talked about it before, is where they're just now starting to put the undercard to where we're excited about buying a full pay-per-view and watching the entire card because these fights are going to be awesome. Like you actually stack the card with like five main fights on the pay-per-view, or 4 fights on the pay-per-view that are actually going to be like, wow, I want to watch all of them. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
no, for sure. It's an event. I mean, we saw over the weekend how the whole the whole card got shuffled around, and it still made for a great event because people are paying for the event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what's happening with boxing. So I think Gervonta's got in a good position. He's not the face of boxing for the world. No, that's still Canelo. But for American boxing, 100%. Everybody that we know, everybody that I know, I talk to, Davis is that guy for them. You know what I mean? That's their little Mike Tyson that they love watching to fight because he puts people out. For the most part, like he has 20 some odd KOs out of his 29 fights. He has like 26 or 24 or something like that.
What, Gervonta? He only
Yeah.
has 2 decisions, and one of
Okay,
them
so there you go.
being
So he's 29-0 with
he's not through.
27. So he's 29-0 with 27 not KOs, at least finishes. That's what we like to see in America, right? We like to see knockouts. That's why everybody, always watch boxing. That's why Mike Tyson was one of the favorites, Roy Jones Jr., all those guys. So I think he's in a great position, but he's not the face of world boxing. No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm trying to look up what the pay-per-view numbers were for the UFC in 2023. I had done this a while ago, like a couple years ago in like 2021, and it was literally like I think their lowest selling event was like 400,000. And this is a company that, I mean, they put on like 13 pay-per-views a year, sometimes 14.
Yeah.
They'll stack. Sometimes July they'll have 2 pay-per-views, sometimes in December they'll have 2 pay-per-views. So we're talking about 13 to 14 pay-per-views a year. Really, it should be diluted, and you're still on your lowest card selling 400. And on the boxing side, Tank Davis was over here selling 200, and they're like, "Oh my God, this guy's a star." I don't know that,
Yeah, what was it? The 300 sold the most pay-per-views in a long time, right? UFC 300. And I think 301 out of Brazil when they had Pantoja fighting Royval still did, like you said, like close to 400,000 pay-per-views. And it was
Probably
something.
something like that.
It
Yeah, and
was something
that was a fight that I
that was a
literally
card that I was just like, huh? All right,
I
whatever.
forgot about that one.
Yeah. That was 301. That was right after the biggest card of the year that, everybody loved, UFC 300. But so I think you're absolutely right. I think the standpoints of what a major pay-per-view is in boxing is different now than what it used to be. You know what I mean? Now we have to realize that you guys still have to build it back up and start giving fight fans more than just one fight. Because I'll go all the way back to when I remember growing up, and it was Larry Holmes, Mike Tyson, the one that he knocked him out in 30 seconds, right? It was like 30 seconds in the first round, like fight started, he moved around, boom, and then bang, Larry Holmes is gone. Like, he's out of there. I remember being like, I was either like 9 to 11 years old, somewhere in there. And that was the only thing I was staying up for, was just Mike Tyson. That was the whole entire thing that I was staying up for. Everybody my sister and her boyfriend at the time had people over. We were there. I was allowed to stay up to watch Mike Tyson. That was the thing. I don't even think we turned on the actual pay-per-view that night until
The main event.
I don't even think they even tried to, they didn't care. You bought the card just for Mike Tyson, only to turn it on when Mike Tyson was getting there, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the issue with the boxing pay-per-views right now, is that they're so top heavy. Now we're seeing, with the introduction of Saudi Arabia, we're seeing a little bit more stacked cards. We have the first Riyadh season that's outside of Saudi Arabia, with the one coming up next month. I think it's a month from today, actually.
It's Terrence Crawford and Israel Madrimov.
Yeah, super stacked card. And
Yep.
that one, even with a fight falling out of it, it had Tim Tszyu versus Virgil Ortiz Jr. falling out of it, and it's still a stacked card. So I think if they can get to the point where they could compete, put the money into it, stack these cards, and you can do once a month pay-per-views, even, once every other month. And I think the market will be there for them, as long as you put on these great cards. You know what I mean?
And then you'll build up the younger names of these guys coming through. Put these prospects that you want to see on these cards like that. Don't put them on a Friday night top ranked 12:30 card at night just to try to get a prospect to sell some money on his own or anything like that. No, put them on these big cards that people are going to want to see and want to purchase along with other superstars. So now you can start. You're almost like you're investing into them without knowing you're investing into those athletes. You're investing into being a part of their journey, because you're getting a chance to watch them early in their career. There's, how many times that I've watched, a guy early in his career, and I followed him just for the fact that I saw him in his 7th fight. I was like, oh wow, it's only his 7th fight. All right, let's see it. And I followed him for the rest of the time. I mean, it just happens. You know what I mean? You end up getting invested a little bit into it. The guy puts in a great performance, or the girl puts on a great performance that day, and you just kind of get invested into that fighter just because you had the chance to watch him have this one unbelievable performance. It also works the other way. I got super annoyed with the first time I ever got to watch Gervonta Davis fight. It was on the Conor McGregor Mayweather card, as he was the undercard. He was the co-main event. And I'm like, oh, I heard this unbelievable things about Gervonta Davis. Oh my God, I can't wait to watch it. Dude played with the dude for I don't know how many rounds, and it was not great. And it's like, I feel like he could have got him out there whenever he wanted to, and it didn't seem like he really gave a damn at the time. And I never really was a fan from watching that fight. Now,
it just has to be something where they're like we're talking about, exciting fights.
Yeah. Well, now I'm a big fan of Gervonta Davis because I watched more of him now, and I've got to do it. But it let me know about the guy. I didn't like it that day, but I learned more about him. Right. And then, but if he had a great performance, I would have been following him the whole entire time, but I still knew about him. So I still got to see him, and his name registered to me more often than not as I was going along. So I followed him more, even though I wasn't happy with that performance that I got to witness the first time. I still got to watch him, on that undercard, which was nice. Just like all other athletes. I tuned into the UK card 2 weeks ago because of Ben Whitaker Jr., because of his viral moment there. And I got to watch him. I was like, okay, I'm watching a younger guy. I'll tune into these other cards and follow some younger guys around, but let's start putting these younger guys on better cards. So that way, when you have a guy like a Keyshawn Davis that's coming up, you have a Ben Whitaker Jr., you have these younger guys coming what's a um he just fought and you just said his name. Russell, Antoine
Yeah.
Russell. You put like that was a great card. We had a great undercard on there. Put these young prospects on that card and get them moving, and let's see it, because it's just going to grow the sport more than not. Why has the UFC got so big so fast? It wasn't just the new dynamic and the promotion of it. It was the fact that they built their own athletes.
Mm-hmm.
They grabbed some athletes from, different organizations. Yeah, put them on, but then they started giving you free fights, in the early stages so you can watch some guys. They did the Ultimate Fighters. They did these things. Why can't we bring a Contender back? I know it's called the Contender Series for Dana White, but the Contender Series originally was a boxing series with Sugar Ray Leonard and everything like that, where they were doing fights kind of just like this, just like the Contender Series for Dana White, but they were doing it for boxing. Let's bring back a boxing series like that. Why don't we have that? There used to be Thursday night fights or Friday night fights on HBO where we got to see, upcoming boxers, big names, you know what I mean? Or bigger names coming up. It's hard to stay up to 12:30 and watch Top Rank and then start a show that late at night. Like you're starting a show at 10 o'clock. I got to stay up at 10 o'clock to watch the first fight. And now the main event's at 2 o'clock. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's
most definitely.
Put the card on a little bit earlier, stack it with some prospects, and let's go. Like, let's start building these guys
Golden Boy
up.
used to do this like a few years back, man. Like, a few years, like 7 years ago. But they used to do these toe-to-toe Tuesdays that I thought were really good. You
Tuesday
had
night.
these guys that were like kind of in like their records were in like the 10 to teens of fights, and then you would see them like make mistakes. You know what I mean? Against guys that they're like supposed to beat. But those are the ones where you could really learn from them, even just as a spectator.
But you also get it. You also get invested in guys like that. A guy that's supposed to be a prospect, all of a sudden he has a hard fight. He shows his grit or whatever it is, and boom, and then you're like, man, I really like that. He was backed up into a corner. He really showed that he's like, no, I got this. I can flip the script. I can change it. I can go. Or vice versa. You see the underdog that, yeah, you have an A side and a B side in boxing. This guy's got a better record, or he's the prospect coming up, but this guy has a winning record as well. He's like, this guy's 12-0. This guy's 10-1. Well, maybe this guy comes out on top this time because he rises to the occasion, has a great performance. I'm gonna look out for that guy's name now, because like he was a guy that wasn't supposed to win. Now maybe he's turned the corner in his career and he's gonna go farther. Who knows? So I definitely think like that toe-to-toe Tuesdays, let's bring back the old school boxing Contender Series. Let's go. Let's bring back.
Anything that's going to help the sport, I definitely want to see. Anything like that. Even on these Riyadh season ones, like they could do like what they do in the UFC, where they put a really good fight as the first fight, so you tune in, and then the next one they put one of these prospect guys that make you want to watch that, and then they stack it around that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So people do that. Getting to some comments here. We got Boxing Center. What are your guys' predictions on Manny Correa versus Cushing? We're definitely going to get to that in a minute. We're going to break down some of the fights over the weekend, and more than laughs. He's got a few Cuban flag emoji. Vamos Cuba. Who are you referring to with the Cuban flag emojis? More than laughs. Let me know. Who are you excited for coming out of Cuba? And then
Eddie
El
Cruz,
Presidente. Right? Eddie, El Presidente himself, Dave Van Auken, saying great point to what the professor was saying. But some last little boxing news before we get into that. We were talking about Teofimo. We were talking about Devin Haney. Teofimo, after his fight, had said, man, I don't know if I want to do this cut even at 140 anymore. I want to go up to 147. Do you see him having success at 147? And who do you see him potentially beating at 147? Right now, a lot of those belts are being held still by Terrence Crawford, but the IBF is now held by Boots Ennis. The WBC is now held by Mario Barrios. The WBA, I'm sure, is going to be, stripped from Crawford soon as well. And then I'm sure Stanionis is going to be the one sole champion there because he's the regular champion, right? And then he will be elevated to just normal champion. Here we go with the wordplay again with the boxing. Try to keep up with us. It's hard for us to even keep up with it. But You know, who do you see him even being able to fight? And before I even ask you that question, there was one piece of news that I saw. Speaking of the WBC title, right? I want to show this story of a fight that's in talks for Mario Barrios. I don't know if you've seen this, but they're talking about Manny Pacquiao making a comeback at 45 years old versus Mario Barrios for the WBC title. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think Manny Pacquiao would even be able to really contend at the high level? Do you think that he sees something in Mario Barrios where he says, okay, you know, Keith Thurman beat him, Gervonta beat him, maybe I can beat him, even though Barrios did have a great performance against Ugas, who beat Manny 3 years ago next month?
Yeah, I think it's just a Manny Pacquiao that doesn't want to give up boxing. To tell you the truth, man, I hate to say that. Manny can do whatever he wants. I mean, he's proven time and time again he can be retired, then go in there and fight a Keith Thurman, fight a Broner, and still be healthy on the opposite side of the fight. You know what I mean? So he can do whatever he wants. But I think at this time, after all this, it's just you don't like giving up the fighting. He's a fighter. And I just think it's hard for some guys to give it up. And by all means, I understand just competing in any sense, you know, as an athlete is just amazing. I love it in all type of ways. So I get that, you know, it's hard to do that. It's hard to stay away, especially if you feel you have something in the tank. You know what I mean? If you have that Rocky Balboa, there's still something in the gut. I got to get it out. You know what I mean? There's something down there buried. I get it. I just hope that, you know, he doesn't take one too many of these before he gets hurt or before that clock really runs out on him as far as him being able to compete at the highest level.
I mean, some could argue that the clock already ran out 3 years ago when he fought Ugas. When he fought Ugas, he was coming off of a 2-year layoff after he had fought Keith Thurman. So he's had one fight in the past 5 years. And then on top of that, when he did go into that fight as a 42-year-old against Ugas, I'm on record saying before the fight, I said he's not going to win this fight. I don't think Manny Pacquiao is going to beat Ugas. Ugas is good. People just don't know that he's good.
No, he
And
is good.
then
He's very
shout
good.
out to our guy more than last, Bamo Cuba. He, you know, Cuban fighter, went out there, did his thing. But my, I guess, question, which I'm going to answer myself and then I'll bring to you, is if you're Manny Pacquiao, and to your point, if you still have more in the tank, you feel you have more to give, then what is there to lose, right? I like maybe he doesn't want to be, you know, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50 and go, man, you know, I could have gave it one more shot and I could have been like, I could have been right now 45 years old. He could be like, what's his face? George Foreman's.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The lean mean grilling machine. He could go out there and win a title at 45 years old.
Yeah.
He won't be like no Bernard Hopkins at 49, but 45 years old, that's a big accomplishment to win a world title, especially the WBC. But like I said, you know, what does he have to lose? Obviously, the big answer to that is your health,
That's
right?
about
So
it.
I
Yeah,
feel like if you're Manny Pacquiao's team and you go, all right, Manny, we're going to let you do this, but just know if you get into any sort of trouble, like we're throwing that towel in right away.
Yeah. And I think if there's any,
make it as, you know,
I agree
safe
with
as
you.
possible.
I agree with you. I think that's the way it has to go. I think that's the legitimate conversation you have to have with your fighter at that age. But again, though, man, if anybody's going to do it, Manny Pacquiao has done so many things in the sport. It's kind of hard. Like if he wants to try it, man, like I said, like I know he, like you said, he could have already, that the time might have already passed him. He could have, those things might very well be true, but he still came out on every side of those fights healthy. Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
even though he did get beat up by Ugas.
He's not like, it's not like it changed him dramatically. It's not like it did anything. He's still Manny Pacquiao doing the Manny Pacquiao things that Manny Pacquiao does. Right. So I feel like he still has at least one more opportunity to test this. I just hope he's testing it, you know, the right way, and he's taking all of the right preparations for it. The team has had that conversation, like you just said, hey, if you get in trouble, the towel's flying. You know what I mean? We're not taking any chances with your health or anything like that. You know, I think if that happens, yeah, man, I feel like Manny Pacquiao as a retired fighter has has probably a better chance than most retired fighters to come back and do something, for the fact that he was always in shape. He was always, I don't feel like he ever, like, he probably never stopped training. He just didn't fight. You know what I mean? He was probably working out in some fashion, training in some fashion all these years, doing something. He's probably still sparring. You know what I mean? Things like that. I hope it's not one too many. You know what I mean?
So if I'm picking up what you're putting down correctly, you're saying that if anyone can do it, it would probably be Manny Pacquiao.
At this age, at this type of category, at a weight category, like, yeah, because the last time we saw him, even though he lost, his hands are still fast.
And you know what? I'll also second that by saying the other person that probably could still do it too is Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah.
He could potentially go out there and win a world title as well. The only
Yeah.
difference is if Manny adds one more loss to the record, doesn't really matter. Floyd, you can't really
And
can't
that's
really afford to do
why
that.
Floyd may not do it, because he doesn't want.
Floyd wouldn't, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think Floyd should. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Well,
that being said, when I bring this up, because okay, we're talking about Teofimo moving up to 147. If the WBC title is spoken for, you know what I mean? We got the IBF that's being fought for, but with the timing of that, like let's say, Ennis fights, and then we figure out what's going on later in the year. Who, possibly Stanionis, who does Teofimo fight at 147 pounds? That makes sense. Because now that we have Bud out, we have Sean Porter out, we have.
What do you call it? Because Devin Haney was also in. I'm going to put this Devin Haney Teofimo Lopez fight together for everybody, just so they can just make it shit happen and leave me alone. Because Devin Haney's talking noise like he wants to move it to 147, extend his legacy, and fight Terrence Crawford. First off, you ain't getting that Terrence Crawford fight. That's fucking. Throw that shit out the window. Throw it in the garbage can. Throw it wherever you want. Put it in a little, like, I wish that one day this would happen. Make your make-a-wish for Santa, whatever you want to do. Put that in that Santa letter and send that shit to him and hope to God you get it then, because you ain't getting a Terrence Crawford fight, bro. You ain't getting a Terrence Crawford fight. It ain't happening.
Well, Terrence Crawford's already exited the building.
That's what I'm saying.
As
like,
far
so
as that, he's looking at 154 now. He's possibly could move up to 160, possibly even 168.
But I mean, literally says Devin Haney aims to. My goal is to move up to face Bud Crawford to continue and expand my legacy. No, bro, he's already gone. You're just talking.
Style makes boxing, and I think my style beats Bud's style. Bro, his style couldn't even beat Ryan's style, and a lot of people were saying that Ryan is one-dimensional.
And your style ain't beating Earl Spence either, bro. All right.
And here's the other thing too, right? Because now that I brought this up, or you brought this up, really, I just brought up the article. I had it waiting in the wings. You know what I mean? I knew it was gonna get brought up, so you just threw up that assist right there. When Bill and Devin, I start by saying Bill because Bill is the mouthpiece for Devin. We're saying, oh, we could go up to 147. We could fight somebody like Keith Thurman. Keith came out and said, bro, you better watch out because like you're able to win these fights because you're fighting these smaller guys. You don't have the punching power to be able to keep off the bigger guys. So when these bigger guys get a hold of you, you're going to get hurt. And he was saying that primarily to Bill. He said, you're going to get your son hurt. We saw that basically, in his last fight. He fought a guy who was, 3 pounds heavier than 140, and he got seriously hurt in that fight. So if he tries to go up to 147,
no go.
I made a joke to you that was saying that, let's say we go back 13 years. You remember, not 13 years, 11 years at this point, 11 years last month. When Broner went up to fight for the WBA title against Paulie Malignaggi, people said, you know what, this is kind of a safe bet if you're going to move up the weight classes like that, because Paulie is the softest puncher in the division. I think maybe he would even agree with that. Right.
All his stuff was from speed.
Yeah. And I mean, a guy like Devin Haney, he might end up getting TKO'd by Paulie Malignaggi if he tries to go up to 140 or 147, I should say.
I'm going to make your point for you because you're absolutely right. You're 100% right. You know why? Because we already saw him getting like olayed to the corner by Jorge Linares. Like, stuck this man where he was doing this right at the end of the round. 15 more seconds in that round, Jorge's putting him out. Because dude was already like this, and then he olayed him at the bell and said, go ahead, walk back to your corner. And it's like, that's a 135er that got dropped by Loma to the body and was out of there, right? Like Loma finished him.
Mm-hmm.
And it just shows you that, like you said, he doesn't have the punching power to keep these bigger guys off him. Guys that are going to walk through a punch to give a punch.
So
guys
if he goes in there against somebody like one time.
Yeah. No, not happening. It's he's getting one timed is what's happening.
Yeah.
Even if he goes in there against Danny Garcia's left hook, he's getting left hooked to death. Like it's over.
Oh, for
like
sure. Yeah. He'll look like Amir Khan.
Yeah, absolutely. Just be getting all over the place, right?
So that being said, when Devin Haney says, I'm looking to move up to 147, he's also said as well, I'm going to take a year off as well. So that's why they moved him to champion in recess. Essentially, that means at any time that he wants to come back, he can fight for the title automatically, no questions asked, right? So with that being said, if he says, I'm going to take a year off, and he's also talked about the rematch with Ryan, I think him moving up to 147 makes sense because if you're going to rematch Ryan, I don't feel like that fight's not going to happen at 140 pounds. You pretty much have to move up to 147. I feel like he's correct. He's going to move up to 147 for his next fight, whether it be 2025 or whenever. But I feel like it'll probably be a rematch with Ryan Garcia. What do you think?
That makes way more sense. Like to me, that's just what he just did with this little, what he's stating there is clickbait. That's all of us to get exactly the conversation we're having here because he knows damn well he ain't getting a Crawford fight. Let's be real. That ain't happening.
Yeah, unless he's just delusional, unless, he's still concussed from the fight that he had with Ryan Garcia.
I wouldn't put it past anybody in this day and age thinking that they're not like they're better than what they are. Like it seems like everybody drinks their own Kool-Aid a lot. So that's fine. So he probably does. He probably thinks he's, he might be able to get it, but it's not happening. Dude's looking, obviously he's moving up to 154. He's already fighting a world champion at 154. Then he wants to move up to 160 and then 168 and try to get Canelo. That's the ultimate goal. Crawford ain't coming back for you, buddy. It's not happening. Now, Teofimo Lopez, I think it would be a great fight for him, but what you're saying makes much more sense. Wait out. Go revenge that loss. Go show everybody you can beat him, which I don't think you do beat him. I think he still catches you with the left hook at some point, even at 147, being even healthier than what he was. I hate to say it, but if you take a year off, what are you focusing on? To get bigger? Are you focusing on power? What are you going to focus on for a year to take off like that? Because my whole thing is you got to have, there's something he needs to work on. If he gains weight, he could take away his speed. Doesn't mean you're going to add power now that you're taking away your speed and you added weight. Like, I just feel like you're not a heavy punching guy. Like, it's just not what it is.
I mean, he could just look back on the tapes and see, okay, how was I getting caught with those hooks? Like, what bad habits did I have? And that's pretty much maybe the extent of it. I don't know that he's going to necessarily be able to add more power unless he gets the absolute best, like scientific, strength and conditioning person out there that's able to work on like the mechanics and the torque and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like he already does.
Maybe I think the delivery system is good.
But I feel like he already has that pretty much. But it's just the power's not there. Yeah. So, like to your point, I don't know how you put that on without maybe significantly slowing yourself down, which was part of one of his attributes, which could potentially put him in more dangerous situations.
Yep.
So I'm not sure. But we'll see how the cards get dealt. That being said,
I can definitely see what you said. No, I can definitely ending this. I can definitely see what you said though. I believe that his next fight is in a year versus Ryan Garcia, and that makes the most sense. I'm sure it'll probably end up being that at 147.
Yeah, for sure. Most definitely. That being said, let's move forward to our weekend preview finally. First, before we get into the fight that El Presidente is at, Masvidal versus Diaz, the rematch in boxing, and we have a pretty stacked card on that one as well. Let's talk about the top rank that's going down over the weekend. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again on this one. We have our boy, everyone's favorite fighter, Shakur Stevenson versus Artem. they had to put his what's it called? They had to put his first name because kind of like when how they had like Khabib Nurmagomedov, they would
Yeah.
just put versus Khabib.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those where we have a fight card for Top Rank. I feel like it should be a pretty solid card. I'm just a bit concerned about the main event. Now, let's go from the bottom. We got Keyshawn Davis. It's another one where instead of putting Davis, they put Keyshawn. This guy is legit. When I spoke about earlier how I made the mistake of going to the Teofimo fight live, he was the one that made the show worth it. He fought Jose Pedraza, and he put on a clinic against Pedraza. And a lot of people had said, this is the best Puerto Rican boxer out there right now, and blah blah blah. And yeah, he put a clinic
He's good
on him. So he's definitely got a lot of potential. We'll see what happens in this fight. We got Foster versus Conceicao. Conceicao is a guy who I feel like I like him because I felt like he possibly got robbed when he fought for the title against Oscar Valdez. If I'm not mistaken, this was the fight where Valdez had popped hot like the day before, and they still let the fight go on because they said, "Oh, it was in his herbal tea," which is dumb because for one, you don't know where, kind of like the whole ashwagandha thing with Ryan Garcia. You don't know where the contamination came from, if it was a contamination at all. So to come out and blame something right away, it just looks sketchy. And then you blame it on something like herbal tea. I thought it was a really sorry excuse. At least try to say like maybe it was one of my supplements I took. I don't know. Everyone's saying that it was, you know what I mean? There's a much better excuse that could have happened for that. But I thought Conceicao, a lot of people thought that he outboxed him in that fight. He ended up fighting Shakur. That was another fight that Shakur won the fight, but there was things that Shakur was doing in that fight that the ref was really kind of letting him get away with, like the whole hand in the face.
That's the one I was talking about. Yeah, he kept putting. I didn't understand
He
that.
kept putting his hand in his face, and the ref kept warning him, but then he kept doing it. So it's like, why are you warning the kid if you're not going to do anything about it? It's and here we go with my rabbit holes, right? There's certain things in boxing that can help the sport as far as the entertainment level, right? We're talking about Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia. We saw Devin Haney. There's clips of Devin Haney just shooting basically for, body locks, hugs. You know what I mean? And I when I say shoot, I mean like he's shooting like a wrestler, but straight up for like a body lock, hug. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
How is
agreed.
that like? How is this not against the rules? You're not supposed to hug like that. You're not supposed to intentionally hug like that. So I feel like when we talk about this whole Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, like league that's potentially going to start, there needs to be some rule updates in that as well, in the sense of, hey, the refs need to know if these fighters are fighting under this, that you're not doing excessive hugging. You're not doing, like if you're breaking the rules, you're going to be warned. Now, personally, I'll give this to Shakur. The whole hand in the face thing is something where it's like, all right, move it out of the way, do something. You know what I mean? I feel like that's one of those rules where, whatever. If he could do it, he could do it. I don't really like that. I don't really like that rule. But the hugging, it kills the momentum. It drains excitement from fights. And if you're not going to do nothing about it, what are we doing here? What are your thoughts on kind of my
No, I agree
just
with you. I
spew
thought
of garbage?
the hugging and all that. I absolutely agree with you. I never understood why, like in the Ryan Garcia Devin Haney fight, I definitely thought Devin Haney could have got out of there if he would have stopped. Would have been warned and maybe even given a point deduction for the excessive hugging in that, right?
Yeah.
In that thing. Again, he's doing what he needs to do to survive. Not knocking anyone trying to do something like that, but it's on the ref to then make sure that doesn't happen anymore, right?
Yeah. And hold on, let me cut you off real quick because I just want to make this point. To give a point deduction for holding, I do feel like is harsh. But let me ask you this. In that fight, had the ref given him a point deduction for excessive holding, would you feel like that was warranted?
In that fight, yeah, 100%. Because I definitely
Thank you.
thought at some point, I'm like, man, why you keep looking at Ryan? Like, why are you yelling at Ryan when this dude's clearly trying to hug this man and not let go? Like, he's literally trying to hold on for as long as he can to where he can get as much time without getting any punches thrown at him, you know what I mean? And stuff like that. And then Ryan, proceeds to get upset and pull away and do different things, and he gets himself a point deduction. So,
It was
I
it
mean,
was
I absolutely,
silly. And don't get me wrong, Ryan also was initiating clinches as well,
oh, yeah.
or holding as well, but it wasn't like super excessive. You know what I
It,
mean? It was kind of like the natural, like, hey, you come in, we get kind of tied up type thing. But when you're shooting for that, then
yeah. My,
yeah.
as far as the hand part thing, I look at that like the Kobe defense, right? It's like where you just try to put a hand right in his face where he's obviously going to shoot over you. He's obviously going to do whatever, but you're just trying to put your hand right here, right? Just so he can't see something. The only reason I hate that, I don't mind it as far as if the rule wasn't the rule, but because that's the rule, don't allow him to do it. I mean,
Yeah,
if
and
that
don't
wasn't like,
selectively enforce rules.
yeah, that's what I mean. Like if it's the rule to where you can't put your hand out in front of someone's face and it has to be an emotion to where it's like pumping like a jab, then tell him that he needs to pump it like it's a jab or it has to have some type of motion on it. Don't
Yeah,
allow
yeah.
him just to put his hand,
Like a stiff
right.
arm.
Yeah, stiff arm. Don't
Or
allow him to do
like a jousting stick, whatever
yeah.
that is, right? That's essentially what it is.
Yeah, at any point you're allowed to like do that motion, like use your stick as you just called it, right? And then you have to
Mhm.
move, but then you have to come back to your normal stance and you have to start moving your hands and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah, if you're using it to like press off to catch an angle, something like that. But
yeah,
if you're standing right in front of each other and you go like this,
you can't do it. Yeah,
yeah.
and that
And
just
and
happens.
that's what he was doing in
Yeah,
that fight.
and that just happens to be the rule. So as far as I'm concerned, until that rule is changed, you have to enforce that rule. You have to
Mhm.
get them to understand, like, no, you can't. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. Like, stick to the rule. Let's go. Just like I don't want somebody holding or rabid punching behind the head. Tell them right away, stop that. Like, get on them quickly about that. Let's. Those are the rules of boxing. Like you said, don't be pick and choosy of which one you're which one you're there. It's down the middle. These are the rules. Allow it to happen. Simple as that. This is what happens, right?
Mhm.
Don't allow one person to rabid punch, and then that guy does it the whole entire fight. And then when the other guy does it, you get on the other guy. Like we see that a lot. Or the holding from one guy, and now the other guy wants to hold, and you're going to yell at that guy, and vice versa. All the other different stuff going on.
Y-
It just enforce the rules that are the rules of boxing. Other than that, that's all you have to do. That's literally it.
And to be fair, maybe Stevenson stripped of his titles due to missing weight, titles on the line for Conceicao only. Stevens, excuse me, Stevenson had 1 point deducted in the ninth round for unsportsmanlike conduct. I'm not gonna lie, this night that I was watching the fight, I was watching it at a bar. So it was one of those where, like I had met up with my wife met up with like her friends and they were all chatting and whatnot. I was trying to make sure like, okay, like are these girls cool or not? So I was kind of like half chatting with them, half watching the fight as well, because I'm always trying to catch the fights. I'm sure you're the same way. Like if I'm doing something Saturday night, maybe I got my phone out, something, I'm at least seeing what's going on. So maybe I missed that part if that's what the point deduction was from.
Mm,
But regardless, my point is that that was kind of unfortunate in that fight as well. Do I think he would have won that fight as far as Conceicao goes? Probably not, but it's just one of those things where I feel like he's kind of gotten the short end of the stick a few times now. That being said, Foster's a great fighter. And then we have the main event, Shakur versus Artem. And actually, let me go ahead and go back to Shakur's BoxRex page, right? So he's 21-0, 10 KOs, and Artem is 12-1. His last fight was a loss against Frank Martin. So we'll see. This is one of those ones where when you're fighting a guy whose last fight was against Frank Martin, people are going to naturally do the fight math,
yep.
even though the fight math doesn't always make sense, right?
It never adds
Fight
up.
math, yeah. Sometimes it does. Every once in a while,
Mm-hmm.
you get it right. But it's one of those things where sometimes people get the right answers, but the equation's wrong. And you know what I'm talking about as a
Oh,
teacher.
absolutely. I got you, brother. Absolutely. You're
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely
You're like,
right.
how did you come to this? But you got the answer right. I don't know
Yeah.
how. but that's why they tell you to show your work on an exam.
True.
But that being said, we'll see. And another big thing, we brought it up on the show, is that people are still have a really bad taste in their mouth from this last performance with Edwin De Los Santos. Now he was saying his hand was hurt, this and that, whatever. My thing is look, I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt, and I mean, obviously as a boxing fan, I'm gonna watch this fight, but and also my man, fire your barber. Look at that lineup, bro. Look at how crooked that lineup is. You
Wow.
see that?
Yeah.
Bro, you better fire your barber, Shakur. Somebody did you dirty in this picture. But that being said, people have a bad taste in their mouth from this fight, man. I know people that were saying, dude, I literally fell asleep. They put him on a Thursday night, and it was at, like you said, like at 12:30 at night, whatnot. And it was just a lack of engaging in action. The thing is I get it. Everyone's like, oh, boxing, it's the sweet science. You're supposed to hit and not get hit. But also, this is a fight sport. You're supposed to fight. So you can hit and not get hit. But if you're not hitting, then what are we doing here? Like the whole point, like you have to be engaging. That's another thing too. Like we see in MMA, when these guys just sit in front of each other like that, the ref will be like, hey, gentlemen, what's going on? We're here to fight. Get in there and fight.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Things of that nature. So when I was talking about a possible Saudi league enforcing new rules, things of that nature, that could be a rule as well. Hey, listen, we can't have none of this like I'm just gonna like back up every time you try to engage me. You know, that could be something that will help the sport as well. I get it. You know, people talk about, oh, well, it's for the fighter safety and you don't want to get hit and this and that. Well, then, bro, go play soccer. You know what I mean?
I I agree with you, but also I do love dominant defense. If you can prove to me that your defense is dominant, I love seeing that because you're letting me know as a boxing person that your defense is he can't hit you. He can't do that. But back to your point, because you're absolutely right, you have to engage. You have to be in an area to where you can show your defensive prowess and show him miss and do those things and then counter off of them to make that even more effective in a way to actually be entertaining per se, right?
Hmm.
Because there's been with what Mayweather and his style, it's the Mayweather shell. It's no longer the Philly shell, right? As he likes to say it. He's like, that's my shell. It's like it's the Mayweather defense, right? So in some fights, yes, you can consider him almost running a little bit, but in some fights, he showed you that he can walk someone down with the Philly shell and he
Hmm.
can get, those punches that come out and play that game. So it's a balanced give and take, but I agree with you. There definitely should be some times where the ref can do something more or maybe give a yellow card, a warning to you and a warning to the other person or whoever you want to do it saying, hey,
Like they do
and
in Asia.
yeah, like when you're not engaging, here's a yellow card, bro. The next one is a point deduction. I'm telling you my warning right now. And this goes for
Yeah.
the whole entire match. I've watched you for 4 rounds right now. You've thrown a total of 30 punches. Here's your yellow card. And you can go over in between rounds and be like, hey, and give it to the corner and let them know. Be like, hey, you got to get them to throw punches because this is your yellow card. Something like that. I don't know. But you have to be able to, you definitely need to be engaging. And I don't care if it's engaging in the sense of you want to show your defensive moves, you're going to make a miss and be there and make a miss and then be on the attack. That's fine. But you can't just be stagnant, not doing anything, not being in the range to be hit and just being out there looking at each other. I can't, boxing should never end up like a Derek Lewis, Francis Ngannou fight
Yeah.
ever.
Exactly.
It should never end up like that.
Two points to what you said, right? I'm gonna go with the one about the points and whatnot. You know, throughout this conversation, we've talked about a couple different rules and whatnot and what the refs can do. I what I want to see from these refs is a lot of the times, especially if a fighter's the favorite, they just kind of turn a blind eye to the obvious break in the rules. And I feel like that's inexcusable because you have the best seat in the house. It's not even a seat. You have the best view of everyone in there. You're right there next to them. You can touch them if you want. You're allowed to. So that being said, if you see a blatant like rule break, let's say like for example like an intentional holding, you can maybe the first one you let it go because it's an intentional holding. It's not that serious. The second one you see, You give them a warning. Hey, I don't want to see that. Then once you see it again, you can give them a stern warning. If I see that again, I will take a point from you. That will help change the dynamic of the fight. And then let's say you see it again, then it's up to the discretion. Do I want to give them the one more warning? Do I really want to take this point? It's up to the discretion of the ref. But if you're giving them that stern warning, I will take a point if you do it again. Then we're gonna see people quit doing stuff like that. To your other point, right? Which I kind of forget. What was your other point? Oh, we were talking about defense. Yeah. So we were talking about defense, right? And you hit it right on the head. It's about the distance in which you are defensive.
Yep.
You talked about Mayweather. I want to bring up a case study and an example of Canelo versus Danny Jacobs. You saw there's all sorts of videos of him doing the movements and moving and whatnot. There's a difference in defense because I agree with you as well. I love to see defense. I love to see solid defense. You know, we saw glimpses of that through different Canelo fights, right? As I'm using Canelo as an example, in the Triple G rematch, there was like a couple where he dodged like 5-6 shots in a row against that. There's that one clip where he did that against Austin Trout, the viral clip where he did that against Danny Jacobs. These are all like you're dodging shots that can hit you because you're still in that range. And therefore, in that range, if you wanted to, you could still deliver shots.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just completely retreat from that range where neither fighter can actually physically land a shot, that to me isn't necessarily defense. It's a part of defense. But if you're just retreating and that is your defense, to me, that's not defense. That is,
you have to bring the offense back with that as quickly as you exited. If that's the way the game is, right?
And like, let's say, let's say that's your style, right? You do that kind of like, Eastern European style where you bounce out of range, then you bounce right back in afterwards because you're on a rhythm. It's a timing. You go in, boom, 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 like somebody like Dimitri Bivol.
Yep,
we've seen somebody like Usyk. We see that kind of bounce in and out. If that's your style, then that's something different, right? But if you're just like what we saw in the Stevenson versus what's his face, Edwin de Los Santos fight, where you're just completely getting out of range and then moving laterally, bro, come on. That's something where there needs to be some conversations in the rule book, whoever's writing it.
So the next thing that needs to happen then is the ring does not need to be 30 feet long, 30 feet large, right? Let's be real. Everything
the appropriate size ring.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, then if you have, as an organization or as a promoter, and what it really comes down to, let's say Shakur Stevenson's fighting for the WBC title, right? Is that what we're saying?
The lightweight WBC title, that he was essentially granted.
So this is where the promotion isn't going to be able to do anything about it, but the actual sanctioning body, the WBC, will be able to do something about it in my eyes more than the promotion, because everything comes down to the size, like in boxing comes down to the contract, right? The size of the ring and everything like that.
Yeah.
Well, one fighter, I don't think I'm talking out my ass when I say this, but I'm pretty sure Mayweather wanted a 30-foot ring against Pacquiao for exactly the reason how we saw the fight. So he could constantly keep moving against Pacquiao and keep it that way, right?
30 is crazy.
That's huge, right? That's from corner to corner, I think is what we're saying here. From corner to corner is 30 feet. So it's on the largest angle is the 30 to 30 feet. But I think like that comes down to the contract. I think now if you take the sanctioning body of the WBC, the WBA, whatever you want to call it, the alphabet people, and they come in and go, look, your last fight when you had this ring, you put out only this amount of punches, man. Like that, we can't have that. Like you got to go to a 25-foot ring. Like it's got to be a 25-foot ring. It's got to be this. You're fighting for our title, this and that. If you want that, we need it in this because we need, there need to be much more action than this, right? It needs to be there. So there needs to be a standard ring, and maybe that giant ring maybe the ring only needs to get bigger when you go up in weight with bigger humans in the ring, right? The smaller the person, they don't need 30, like a 115-pound person doesn't need 30 feet to try to box. They're not 6'3".
Well, I mean, even a 22-foot ring is a big ring.
Right. I mean, every day.
Sometimes you'll see rings that are like, for example, I think it was Better Beef's last fight when he fought, what's his face? Callum Smith. I was like, dude, how big is this ring? This ring's like, 18 foot, 16 foot, something like that. Like those
It's
are rings that
tiny.
you see like in the gym.
Yeah, that's what I have. That's what we have at our gym at PY Box. We have a 16-foot ring on from corner to corner. I still feel like one of my fighters that has an 84-inch reach can punch me from one corner to the other corner.
Yeah, you saw the ring that we have over at Port Orange.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
I still have plenty of room to move around in something like that, and I'm 6 foot, too. But my whole thing with it is, would I love a 22-foot ring? Hell yeah, I'd love a 22-foot ring to be able to move around in and jab and do all that. These guys are getting 25 or more foot rings, and it's like maybe we need to have just a limit, right? I get the heavyweights might need it bigger. You got two giant 6'7" dudes in there. They weigh 200 and some odd pounds. They're covering long steps when they fight, right? I get that. Maybe that ring needs to be bigger when it comes to the larger men. But why does a 5'6" person that weighs 135 pounds need a 30-foot ring to move around in?
Yeah. So what you said was, it would come down to like the sanctioning bodies, right? What I'm saying is, let's say they do this whole Riyadh season Saudi league that they're talking about. And I had
make
in
a
the
rule
previous
set in that, right?
Well, yeah, I had added in the previous show, if they're going to do that, you might as well buy out the Ring magazine as well.
Oh, agreed. Yeah, I
And then
agree with
you
you on
make
that.
all the other organizations now fall in line, and now the fighters know, okay, the Ring magazine title, because they don't have to be like UFC where they create their own title, right? That
No,
would be
yeah.
kind of, we don't need one more belt. We have plenty of belts, but the Ring magazine really is supposed to be the one belt that rules it all, rules them all, to say. But right now, it doesn't really necessarily have the respect that it deserves.
The belt of power.
Yes, the belt of power. So Sauron needs to now get that belt over to Saudi Arabia
Yeah, let's go.
and have a fight on Mount Doom in Mordor.
Let's go,
And
Mordor. Let's go.
we can do that. And then now, if you're saying, okay, to be the best, I have to compete for this belt. Well, if you have to compete for this belt, you have to fight under our rules, which is a standard 20-foot ring for all fighters. These rule sets that are going to be enforced. And if you don't want to play by these rules, then you can go fight somewhere else. But guess what? The sport is going to leave you behind.
And you ain't gonna get that money.
Exactly, because we got the money over here in Saudi.
Yeah.
Good luck getting them from anywhere else.
Yep.
You know what I mean? These hedge fund investors that want to create this new, these new leagues every couple of years. They put on one pay-per-view, and like Dana White says, it's going out of business sale. So that's essentially what I got with that. My main point with this long-winded conversation about Shakur Stevenson is, my man, I'm going to give you one more shot, but you have to put on a performance that's worth watching. If you can't put on a performance that's worth watching, I had said it before, he priced himself out of the Devin Haney fight, and then in his very next fight, he goes and shows the whole world why he has no market value at all. So go get that market value back, Shakur. I'm actually rooting for you in this fight.
I'm gonna be honest with you, dude. The only reason he's getting me to watch this fight, because I was already like, all right, well, I'll watch the highlights, I'll do whatever, is the two fights before him. I want to watch Keyshawn Davis and I want to watch Foster. I like Foster a lot.
Yeah, exactly, man. Those are great fighters.
Yeah, I want to watch both of those. But yeah, I'll watch the main event after I watch those two. But the only reason I'm tuning in at all is to watch those two.
Well, that being said, I'm, depending on the timing of it, I might be watching that afterwards, like I did with the Teofimo fight after the UFC. The reason is because it's going to be on Top Rank, which is on ESPN Plus, and I love that because now, as soon as one fight's over that I was watching, that I can't necessarily go back and rewatch, I can now.
Yeah, the replays are great. You're absolutely right about that.
Plug it into the Fire Stick, skip forward, watch the fight, skip between all the fluff in between, because in boxing, that's another thing. With the UFC cards, they go, all right, we got the next fight, boom, it's rolling. With the boxing cards, sometimes it's like an hour between the fights. You're like, what the hell? What are they doing?
So crazy.
So that being said, speaking of MMA, speaking of all of that, we got the fight going down. And when we talk about numbers and whatnot, I'm actually super interested in seeing the numbers with this one being a pay-per-view. Yeah. I'm wondering how, like, the viewership for the Top Rank compared to the buys on this, how are those going to look? for the Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal fight card. It's essentially Masvidal versus Diaz 2, but in boxing this time, the last man standing. We got a pretty stacked card. We can kind of breeze through some of these fights. We have the prelim card down here. And then to start the pay-per-view main card, we got Kermel Moten. They added him to this is that young guy. I think he's like 17 or 18.
He's from
Um,
the one that hangs out with he's having beef with Gervonta because he was talking noise to Gervonta about the Mayweather beef that Gervonta has with him.
for sure.
Right?
I saw that.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
that's Kermel Moten, right?
yeah, so I think he's only like 3-0 or something right now. So we'll see. This is one of those examples of exactly what you were talking about. You know, they put like a young prospect on a card
Yeah.
like this.
I'm
And
glad
then
I'm excited for that one because I didn't
they
that's one I was
they
like,
just
okay.
added that one on there. Now we have a super middleweight fight, Danny Jacobs versus Shane Mosley Jr. This is essentially we got a 10 rounder here. It's essentially a fight with a guy like Shane Mosley Jr. who still has a lot left in the tank, but hasn't really had the best outcomes in his fights, versus a guy who's trying to show us, hey, I still got it. How do you see, that one playing out? What do you think? What are your predictions?
Mosley can get it done, but betting money in which I'm looking at is I think Daniel Jacobs is the underdog right now. I think that's a great bet. I think Daniel Jacobs can get the job done still.
Yeah, no, for
I mean,
sure. I
I
think
definitely, like you said, Shane Mosley has a couple bad performances as of late, or just has more in the tank but hasn't performed as super great. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
I think Daniel Jacobs has a one last push to make himself relevant again. I mean, he's still relevant, but you know what I mean, like to get himself to the front of the line for some stuff. Maybe get a fight with a Plant, or maybe earn something up back to a Morel if he can get there, because he still has name power. He just needs something to get him going.
He's on a 4-fight win streak. 4-fight win streak here. He lost against Jason Quigley, who was TKO'd in 2 rounds against Andrade. So if you do the fight math with that,
Yeah.
had a couple other losses, especially earlier in his career. But this is one of those where in the past, people with someone with 4 losses, people are like, oh, he's 4 losses. They start throwing around words like bum, right? I like the fact that boxing's going in a direction where it's the losses aren't defining you as a fighter. The performances are defining you as a fighter. And this is something where Jacobs, a guy also with 4 losses, but it's a dude. I mean, he has much more wins, 37 wins, 30 knockouts.
Yeah.
Incredible. He had lost to John Ryder, which essentially gave John Ryder a title shot against Canelo. He beat Gabriel Rosado in a very close fight. And this is a guy who's got, at the time, 25-12.
Rosado fights every big name in the book, though. If we
That's
click
the
on his
thing. Yeah,
name and do
yeah,
a
yeah,
dive,
yeah.
he fights every big name in the book. That guy's a ball. That guy's a straight up fighter. Straight up fights
Most
everybody.
definitely. Um, he had fought Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Chavez called it quits after round 5 because it's Chavez.
Yeah.
He had lost to Canelo. That was a close fight too.
Yeah.
113, 115, 113, 115, 112, 116. There's a lot of I talked about the highlights and whatnot, but I thought that fight was super close. I mean, I
Oh, it
did give
was.
it 115 to 113 to Saul, but I thought it was close. Derevianchenko, a guy who people said that arguably thought he beat Triple G. Arias, who beat Jarrett Hurd when Jarrett Hurd tried to make a comeback, and then he lost to Triple G. That was a tough fight as well. Look at
Mhm.
that. That's a close fight also. Look, besides the knockdown, I think it was in round 6 or no, round 4.
Yeah.
Jacobs down in round 4. And I think it was because he tried to switch southpaw, if I'm not
Mm.
mistaken. But basically a point deduction away from a draw, and then a one round fight essentially against Triple G. So we're talking about a 1-round fight against Triple G, a 1-round fight against Saul Alvarez, and then he lost to John Ryder, and then he had suffered a KO defeat earlier in his career. But before that, he had came back with all sorts of wins. He beat cancer.
Yeah.
Like
I
this
also think
guy.
I also think when you fight a top flight fighter like Sal or Triple G like that, and you come so close to where you could even argue that it was, it could have been your fight, depending, you know what I mean, on what happens. Like, I feel like it takes a lot out of you mentally to get back on that horse to to realize that other people may take something away from you when you think you've done enough. Because, like you said, one round could easily go the other way if you're only down one round to one of these great fighters like that. It's close enough to where you could say, well, what if another person would watch it and saw it this way? So I think that takes a lot out of you mentally.
No, for sure. Chris J in the house. What's up, guys?
What's
What's up,
up?
Chris J? Moving on to the next fight we got on here is Devin Cushing versus Manny Correa. And remember, our guy Boxing Center had asked,
Yeah.
what are your guys' predictions on Manny Correa versus Cushing? And then Dave Van Auken, who is there live, said Cushing looking good at the press conference today. So, man, you know what? These are both guys who were featured on the show. One of them was featured with our guy, Mr. Chris J himself, on last Monday's episode. Another one was on the Main Fight Bananas page with me and Dave. And this is a fight where you got two similar records. 13-0 versus 13-1. This is one where I just want to see a good fight. You know what I mean? May the best man win. What do you think?
Besides, there's 3 fights that to me that will give it the fight of the night. Essentially, like, on the card. I feel like this one is definitely one of the 3, and it's my favorite for fight of the night as far as like a true boxing fight.
Hmm.
I think one of 2 things are going to happen. I believe Devin Cushing is really going to come out and do what he said he did when he had that when he was at the last press conference that they had, not the fight week press conference, but the one that they were traveling with, where he wrote, "I'm going to steal the show. Y'all are going to know my name when I'm done." I really feel like he's going to push it to make sure that happens, to that we know who he is after all this is done. So I feel like it's going to be either a super dominant performance from Devin Cushing, showing exactly what he wants, like what he wants to prove to all of us, or this is going to go down as the best scrap of the night. Simple as that. Like that's the 2 ways I see it. I think the jab controls a lot of it, and to me, you will see Devin Cushing's jab on display this weekend. And if you haven't seen it, it's a thing of beauty, man. He snaps it real well. He fought out of the Roy Jones Jr. camp for a long time, and out of that area, that's literally where they're all from. They've trained over there with, Roy Sr., Roy Jr., all that kind of stuff. And his jab snaps just like RJJ used to, and he's quick with it, and it's poppy, it's accurate, and he can throw it for years upon years. And I don't mean days, I mean not rounds even. He can keep throwing that jab, for his life. He's great with it. So my prediction for this one, guys, is Devin Cushing comes out and has dominant fashion, or that 135-pound fight right there between those 2 guys are going to be the banger of the night, and it's going to be fun. It's just going to be a great fight, I think. So
Yeah, most definitely. We got Chris J chiming back in. Cushing did look good today and yesterday at the open workout. And then for his thoughts, Cushing versus Correa is my pick for fight of the night. I think you and a lot others as well. So I'm definitely excited to see. And Cushing trained with Big Roy forever. He understands that jab is life in boxing. He's going to pump it at will.
that's what I'm talking about.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. And this is what I'm saying about, like, this is a fight card that, like boxing fans, like true boxing fans would probably years ago, like really go, oh, what is this? Whatnot. But I feel like this is a pretty great card, especially the way it's really come together. I'm super impressed by this.
I'm going to take your point real quick that you said Kermel Moten people. That's the guy that we just talked about. How Ray just brought up how there's a guy they're throwing on an undercard that you want to watch, that you can follow. Kermel Moten, Devin Cushing, 2 prime examples of 2 younger guys that you could watch. One in the teens with the numbers for the fights, one early in the single digits for fights. But those 2 dudes, man, that's like you said, man. I think this is a good little up and coming card.
Most definitely. And then after that, we got Sean Garcia versus Amado Vargas. These are 2 fight families facing off against each other. Sean Garcia being the younger brother of what's his face? Ryan Garcia. We've been talking about him all night.
Yeah.
Where's he at on here? Sean Garcia.
Other
He's
side.
over here.
Right there. Yep.
7-0-1, and Amado
Good.
Vargas is 10-0.
So another one.
That's a great fight.
Yeah.
I mean, these are fights where like a lot of the times you don't see young guys that are undefeated try to put that record on the line against each other. You know what I mean? So
yeah, but and also let's think about this for a minute. We're watching two MMA guys in the main event, which I'm fine with. Like they both can bang. Like I'm cool with Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal fighting all day long. I think that's going to be a good fight. Anthony Pettis, I know, always brings the action. He brought the action the last time he fought, and Chris Avila has turned pro after being MMA already. But besides those two fights, right? Everyone else on that bottom underneath those two fights.
boxing.
That's great boxing fights. That's
so this is it's a boxing card.
Fights. Yeah. I mean, it really is. And these are upping, like, besides Daniel Jacobs and Shane Mosley, obviously been around for a little bit longer. The other three fights, prime example of watching some younger guys go to work and learning, like seeing them live and being able to follow them for, now most of their career. If you catch them from this point on, you can follow them for the majority of their career.
Now, moving into what it looks like the co-main event, Anthony Pettis versus Chris Avila. We got Anthony Pettis, who is 1-0 as a pro boxer. His one win coming against Roy Jones Jr. back last April Fool's Day. I remember that specifically because that's my wedding anniversary. He fought Roy Jones Jr. The other fights on that card were like, who was it? Jose Aldo versus Jeremy. Who the fuck is that guy? Stevens. And yeah, man, he fought him at cruiserweight also, even though Roy Jones, older guy, whatnot. But, he pulled away the victory, which is super impressive for a guy like Showtime fighting at 200 pounds. You know what I mean? This guy was a champion at 155 pounds in the UFC. He fought at 170 against Wonder Boy and knocked him out. And then you're talking about going up 30 more pounds and fighting the legend and Roy Jones Jr. So super out of his weight class and still was able to pull off the victory, even though it was against a older Roy Jones. I remember even after that on BoxRec, he was ranked and like the cruiserweight division. I don't think they show it on here, but he was ranked like in the top 15 in the cruiserweight division. You know what I mean? So the thing is, people talk about these MMA guys, they're MMA guys, whatnot, right? I know guys personally, like no dudes who are these, pro boxers, right? With, 11 fights, whatnot at the cruiserweight division, local dudes. And they aren't ranked. Like Anthony Pettis was ranked higher than them on BoxRec. Now it's BoxRec ranking, so it doesn't mean the most.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got a pro boxing record. You're, essentially an MMA guy or essentially a boxer now, not an MMA guy. And I feel like that holds even more true for Chris Avila. Chris Avila is a guy who was an MMA guy. He had his pro debut. It didn't go his way, but remember, neither did Bernard Hopkins' pro debut. His didn't go his way. Then he fought another, quote, MMA guy, and Anthony Taylor. This is that dude who's like all over the internet doing this, that, and the next. He fought him, beat him. This was a guy who was, I guess good enough to be an opponent for Tommy Fury, who people were trying to call, quote, a real boxer. I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying this is the talker around town when the haters throw this around. Then we have another victory here. He had a victory against Paul Bamba, who I think was supposed to be a Tommy Fury opponent, but then he got pulled. So that's another one that was good enough to supposedly be able to fight Tommy. Then he did fight Jeremy, who the fuck is that guy, Stevens, who was 0-0 in a draw with Jose Aldo.
Yeah. That's what it was.
So now we're coming on five fight winning streak in boxing. You know what I mean? So this is a fight here. This is a good boxing fight. I feel like. What do you think?
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. He's switched over a while ago from MMA, so he's been boxing for a minute, and he's always been a in that Stockton camp with Diaz and all that. So they've always had heavy handwork. You know what I mean? They've always like it's not just ground game over there. They obviously have had the same boxing coach over there for a while, and it's a lot of heavy handwork. So yeah, man.
We got a comment from Chris J. This is a funny one. I tuned in late. Did you guys see that little punk Neon as Diaz if he's going to retire after he
Yeah,
gets knocked out
I
and then
did
getting
see that.
chased into? I actually didn't see that. Is this the guy who he's that skinny kid?
Yeah,
He's that
I
skinny
believe so.
nerdy kid, right?
I
Who's
believe so.
like
Yeah.
who's on like Aiden Ross's Twitch and whatnot, his streams. That's the guy who I don't know if you ever seen him. He was on stream he was trying to talk shit to Top G, Andrew Tate, and and then he goes like hits his inhaler, and he's basically like, "Bro, you're beefing with air. Don't talk to me." So I
He's like, you
thought
have a
like,
you have a problem with air right now. Don't try to
yeah,
fight
yeah,
me if you have a
yeah. He's like,
problem
"Are
with
you
air.
wearing a SpongeBob shirt?" Yeah. So that guy, he's a dork, man.
So yes, to Christopher J's question right here, I watched the clip and right away he made the dumbest mistake I've ever seen anybody make asking a fighter anything, especially about retirement after you get knocked out. Are you fucking kidding me? You're asking the man up there after he gets knocked out, is he going to retire? Why not just ask, hey, if this fight doesn't go the way you wanted to, or you lose, or how, if you end up coming on the wrong end of of the fight and you end up with an L, is this the last fight for you? Something like that. Be a lot more respectful than asking this dude if he's going to get knocked out. But clearly, Mr. N3ON or Neon, whatever the little name is, only did that for more clicks and for us to talk about him like
That's
this.
the thing. Yeah, that's the thing is that whole like era of dorks on the internet that stream and whatnot. Their
Yeah.
whole thing is to like disrespect people, but it's like a prank almost. But the issue is that they've never actually been punched in the face and beat up. So I mean, I think he has. I think he
No,
got
no,
like
no.
robbed
Okay,
before.
so I see all that, and like just because you sparred Sugar Shane and someone hit you a little bit, or you
No, no,
took
I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about like I think he got like robbed one time at like the park.
oh no,
But
I don't give
yeah,
a shit
but
about
all
that.
those other guys, all those other guys are just taking it light on him. I'm talking about legit like, you know,
Getting in there and going through a training camp preparing for a fight. That's what people don't get. Yeah, you think you can go in there and do something, but can you make it through a fucking camp to get ready for a guy who's getting ready for you to stand
not
across
just
from you?
anyone, but
Yeah,
asking Diaz, this is so stupid. Read the room, kid. The thing is too is,
exactly.
unfortunately a lot of pros will kind of let that stuff like kind of just brush it off like, all right, this kid's a dummy. You know what I mean? Like whatever, and they'll just kind of like I know like there's a bunch of fighters that you can name that will be like, yeah, whatever, I'm not going to do nothing. Doesn't even have to do nothing. His boys will be like, yo, that's not how we roll. Like, we're gonna come get you after this. You know what I
That-
mean? Like,
yeah.
it's just dumb. I'm not advocating for anybody to get beat up in physical violence, but if that were to happen, I wouldn't feel the slightest sorry for him,
No, I
and
wouldn't either.
hopefully he would learn his lesson by doing foolish things like that. That
Yeah.
being said, back to the actual fights that are going down. Chris Avila versus Anthony Pettis, I think is going to be a great fight as well for the co-main, and then that leads us into the main event: Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal. What do you see happening in this fight? Actually, let me bring this up to you first.
Okay.
Let me bring this up to you first because I saw this right. Because my main thing with this fight too is I'm kind of like, all right, if you're gonna do this fight in boxing, does it not hurt that Nate just did boxing against Jake Paul, who everyone's hating on, calling him not a real fighter and this and that and the next, and then got beat? You know what I mean? Um, and if you can see this now, it looks like Nate Diaz said, Nate Diaz on his boxing bout with Jake Paul. For one, I was injured. I couldn't really throw a punch. I was effed up. And for two, he was the easiest fight I ever had. Never got tired, never hurt, nothing. It was a timing thing when I got knocked down. I thought he was pretty weak himself. I went in on a 4-week bender before the fight. We trained hard for months on months and we were over it, me and my whole team. Um, how much of that do you believe?
I mean, probably all of it because I don't feel like he's making excuses. I think that's kind of how it looked. If you looked at it, it looked like he was like,
We know how Chris feels.
yeah. I mean, like, let's just take it for what it is. Let's take Nate for what he's saying, right? Yes, there probably is some exaggeration in there. Yes, there's probably some, a little bit of, we're tweaking what I'm telling you to make it sound a little bit better. But overall, I feel like that's what he's done most of his fight career. Like, I'm not trying to be mean. I love Nate Diaz. I've tuned in for all of his fights because I love watching him fight. So, and I think the way he goes about stuff, he's just him. He's probably one of the more realist people that you're going to find in the game, being him himself all the time, right? So I love that. I just feel like when he's had enough, just like he said, when he's had enough, he just does what he wants to do. He's a big enough name. He's a big enough person. He's fought enough people. He knows how to defend himself. I just feel like there's not a lot. Like, yeah, you never got tired, but were you in shape? Maybe you knew exactly what you had to do to get through the rounds. Did you not really train? Maybe you didn't. I mean, maybe you trained on months and then you did go on a 4-week bender because you got tired of this whole thing. I don't know. But when you remember watching the fight, like, he was taking breaks on purpose.
Yeah, no, most
Like,
definitely. I mean,
and then like,
he did have success in parts too, especially
yeah.
like early in the fight and whatnot.
And I do think when
Um,
it comes down to Nate, that if you put a 10-minute round on the clock and then give him like 3 10-minute rounds, he probably wins a lot of fights.
for sure, most definitely. I mean, he definitely has the gas tank. Um, my thing is, I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things where like it could be legit. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but we'll see
He
how
also
this fight plays out.
he also knows what to say. Like, he's not an idiot. He's been around the game forever, right? So like,
Yeah,
it
most
could
definitely.
be 100% a lie, but I mean, that's just because he knows exactly what to say.
Let me ask you this: did you see the Chael Sonnen versus Anderson Silva boxing match that took place?
No, was it
Essentially,
really a draw? Was it a
it
draw?
was pretty much like a sparring match. Like they both
Okay.
kind of were just like
I thought it would
moving
be like
around and
that.
whatnot. Now, I'm not suggesting either of these gentlemen are at that level of especially age and whatnot, but we have seen, obviously, um, Nate is, just lost in boxing against Jake Paul, and then Masvidal has lost the past couple in his MMA fighting, and then even when he fought like Colby and whatnot, like he didn't look like he was in like the peak shape, peak performance. Do you think that will play a factor into this fight at all, or do you think that what, regardless, these guys just don't like each other that much to the point where it's hypothetically gloves off?
If I see if what I predict is it'll be a sprint for Jorge in the first 4.5 rounds, 5 rounds. And then we're gonna see a big slowing boxing match after that, a slow one.
Yeah.
We're gonna see a lot of action in the first 5 rounds. That's 15
But
minutes.
let me
That's a
ask you
3 round
this.
MMA fight, right? That's 15
If,
minutes.
based off of your point that you just had a minute ago, like, and that we were talking about, that Nate Diaz doesn't get tired, and this is a 10-round fight. This isn't an 8-round fight. This is a 10-round fight. So we're talking about 30 minutes of fighting. That's longer than Masvidal's fought in any fight. So are we going to see potentially like maybe that there's that sprint in the first 4 rounds, that first 12 minutes, and then after that, do we see potentially Nate putting it on him in the accumulation end up hurting Masvidal if he can't get Nate out of there?
No, not with boxing gloves.
You don't think so?
Not with boxing gloves. No.
We'll
Nate's
see. I
power
mean,
Nate's power translates, I think, tremendously by volume and also by moments where the other person is gassed and vulnerable. And if you see a lot of those moments when Nate does that, it's after someone is extremely tired. And with 4-ounce gloves on, and you keep getting touched with 4-ounce gloves on rather than 8-ounce gloves on, right? Or this fight would be technically 175 would be 10-ounce gloves. Um, I see them being able to hurt people with 4-ounce gloves tremendously in that time frames, in those end of the fight type frames, right? You know what I mean? Where they're fighting 25 minutes straight. The 4th and 5th round, the guy has been already gassed. He's throwing a lot of punches at Nate. Nate's still standing, just like the Leon Edwards fight, right? It was a 5-round fight, the way he wanted it, and
Essentially in that like 23rd, 24th minute.
is when he got his thing off. But it was because of 4-ounce gloves again. I think if you put boxing gloves on those two guys, it doesn't hurt Leon Edwards that as much as it did with that, the right hand he threw before. And I think that's what we're going to see here. Jorge is going to be able to defend himself in the later rounds. He may be gassing a little bit. Nate's not going to gas. I don't think that. I think, Christopher J is right on that. But I think after Jorge tries to get him out of there in the first 5 rounds, Nate has now a chance to win the last, few rounds of the fight. But I don't think he'll necessarily win every one of those rounds, because I think with the bigger gloves on, with the higher guard, and all you have to do is worry about hands now, right? There's no takedowns. There's no things like this. You're not getting pushed up against the cage and have to worry about elbows, stomps, kicks, whatever it is. You're going to be on your feet the whole time. I think Jorge is able to defend himself, and he'll win if he doesn't get him out of there in the first 5, he'll win a majority decision or just a unanimous decision by probably 7-3, 6-4, 7-3 though, something like that.
All right, let me push back on that a little bit. So we have an example of an MMA guy going into boxing in Conor McGregor when he fought Floyd Mayweather. He got TKO'd in that fight. Now, maybe you disagree with this point I'm about to make, but I don't feel that Conor got TKO'd in that fight because Floyd was, he was putting it on him, but I felt it was more for the fact that Conor was fatigued and he was gassed out and he was sloppy. That's why he got stopped.
Also the pressure.
Well, yeah, for sure.
That was making him
if he didn't put the pressure on him. But so to that point, and then also in boxing, we see times where people get stopped just because of an accumulation of punches. Masvidal is a guy who, when he gets tired, he's not the most fundamentally sound when he gets tired. He does have a tendency to get kind of sloppy and whatnot. So that's where I can see a potential, the Doctor Strange looking into the potential futures where if in all the different multiverses where Masvidal slows down significantly and Diaz doesn't. And even if Diaz doesn't have the crack on his shots with the boxing gloves on, it's still going to hurt because Masvidal is not going to have the energy, the stamina to be able to do anything besides those punches just hitting you right in the face. Boom, boom, boom. Left hand's down a pipe. Boom, boom. And it's just going to hit him over and over again. And similar to like how Conor, when he got stopped, he was just like looking sloppy all over the place. We could see something like that potentially happening. There could be a stoppage based off of between a mixture of the pressure of Diaz and still being fresh and the fatigue and sloppiness of Masvidal. We could see a referee TKO stoppage standing like that.
My only rebuttal to that is that whenever they both come from MMA, they both come with smaller gloves. They are very inclined to accept the clinch.
Good point.
Like
there might be some more clinch work.
There might
but
be
Diaz is good in the clinch.
No, I'm not arguing the part about them being not good in the clinch and someone not being a better striker in the clinch and things like that. But when you have boxing gloves on in the clinch and you have MMA gloves on the clinch, there's a lot of little different things you can do in MMA. Throw elbows, slap people with your open hand, that can hurt you. Those little smaller shots are going to hurt a little bit more with smaller gloves on, right? Now you have these big padded gloves, 10-ounce gloves on, and you're looking at trying to get those arms out of somebody's, underarm, out of the locked position, trying to
hold them a little bit.
Exactly. So I feel like, and we've never seen Nate kind of rush to get out of a clinch. Even when Jake was initiating the clinch, Nate never really tried to force himself out of there to do it, even though he might have been winning in that moment, right?
Yeah.
He never really yanked away, pulled away, like we saw Ryan Garcia trying to slide his hands out of there because he wants to left hook Devin Haney during that fight, or Lomachenko trying to pull his arms out when someone's trying to hold on to him during fights. Just these guys, even Mayweather, or vice versa, and other things. I just don't see a stoppage like that happening because I feel like both of them would be accepting of the clinch in those situations and would allow the referee to then separate them, and then they would go back to having to get the range, hand gloves come up, and all of that. Someone's going to have to catch someone clean with something and visibly hurt them for a TKO to do that. That can go either way in my book. Either one of them could do it. But I think it'll be a decision 7-3 Jorge Masvidal.
No, I mean, I don't disagree with the possibility. Most definitely. I'm just, if I'm giving the fact that it's a 10-round fight, I'm giving that edge to Diaz. And I haven't even really thought these thoughts until 10 minutes ago. So these are new opinions in my brain. So I could be very well wrong as well. Chris is saying to the points that I was talking about, I think Mayweather really did. If Mayweather really did what he does, McGregor wouldn't have lasted past 3 rounds. Mayweather toyed with him to extend the fight for entertainment value, but that's just me. Chris, you're entitled to your opinion, but that being said, you're fired. Please hand in your fight bananas
Yeah, that's
credentials.
wrong.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No,
I
my
mean,
whole thing,
it
to go back to that,
could
I
be.
didn't think, I don't think that's right at all, because if you watch Mayweather's face going back to the chair every round, it went being from frustrated in the first round to stagnant in the second, no smile in the third, and then a little peak of a smile for the rounds after that, because he figured out the puzzle. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to get him out of there. So I don't think he would have got him out of there in the first 3 rounds if he didn't. I think he was learning and doing exactly what Mayweather does, is he learned everything about that man in 4 rounds and then said, hey,
Yeah.
I'm going to get him out of there.
Yeah, because it got to the point where McGregor was trying to like cut the angles that actually were worse for him.
Yep.
Yeah, they were like
and
they were
you
like
saw it,
reverse angles.
yeah, and you saw it in on the chair. Literally, he literally started cracking a smile in the corner with his coaches, like Mayweather was, as
Yeah.
the rounds went on, because he started figuring out. And he also ate the 3 biggest punches Mayweather had, which was the uppercut, I think a straight left at one point, and there might have been a right hook in there somewhere, or a body shot or something. But yeah, no, I think we're looking at a solid boxing card, though.
No, for sure. And I'm interested and intrigued in this main event. It's going to be interesting to see how this goes. I'm interested to see in these other fights. It looks like the main event will be happening the fight card starts at 9 p.m. What was the fight card start time of the?
It's going to be around 12 o'clock when the main event walks. 12:30. Something
Well,
like
I'm talking about the top rank card. What time does that
Oh.
one start? That
Yep,
one
I do that.
starts at 9 p.m. also. So those will be going on simultaneously. Like I said, I'm interested to see, the numbers in the live audience compared to the pay-per-view sales, what ends up happening. But yeah, I agree with you, man. I think we got a good night of boxing on our hands. So that being said, we definitely covered a lot. We covered potential matchups, some of the news, some of the fights from over the weekend. What else? What other thoughts, concerns, anything else that you got for us before we call it a day?
The biggest concern I have is I need everybody to subscribe to Fight Bananas on YouTube, subscribe to the Boxing Bananas on IG and the Fight Bananas on IG, and give me and Rhea a follow and a like. Why not? Let's go. And get in the comments, talk more to us. We want to talk to you guys too. So the more you guys talk, we always appreciate Christopher J coming on and talking. Oh, real quick, Christopher J, if you're still on there, man, let me be able to comment on your show. I tried to do it and it wouldn't let me. I don't know why. Unlock me, unblock me. But
You're blocked, bro. You're
I don't know.
blocked.
I don't know. I guess I am. But we
You're
always
no,
appreciate.
you're invited to the watch shows, but that's it.
Oh,
You're
that's
not
it. That's
allowed
all
to
I get. I
actually.
get
You're not.
boxing bananas and the watch shows. That's all I'm allowed to do. Okay, I got you. All right, cool. But Darren Kill won't fight on the Paul versus Tyson card.
Darren Till won't fight on Paul versus Tyson card. Visa issues. Well, now it looks like that fight got switched to the 20th in Tampa, right? It's the Paul versus Perry card now, and it looks like Uriah Hall is going to be fighting.
Yeah, I saw that one. Yep, Uriah Hall's on there.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I'm interested to see how that goes. But that being said, also I guess even in November, is that what you're saying, Chris J? So
I don't even think Paul gets that fight anymore, man. When Perry upsets Paul, and I'm calling it, Paul doesn't get the Tyson fight anymore.
most definitely, I have some interesting points on that, but I'll save that for another show, most definitely. But that being said, remember, guys, follow us on IG. Make sure you subscribe to Fight Bananas on YouTube, and then comment even on the IG. Comment on our page and let us know like if there's any specific stories you want us to cover. You can even
Topics.
shoot some of the like news stories into our DMs. Anything that you shoot to us, we'll go ahead and cover it. And then comment on the page. You'll be able to be shown live. We'll get to your comments. We'll kind of let you voice your opinion. You know, some of our other shows, we had some less than favorable opinions, but I definitely still show all of them because hate it or love it, the underdog's on top. So,
Hey, but hey, you know what? So we're gonna be men of our words, right? We've always said the person that ends up commenting the most will get to come on the show at some point, right? We always keep saying that. Well, damn it, Christopher J, you won your chance, buddy. You're gonna come on our show. The next show we do after this pay-per-view, for the Jorge Masvidal Diaz fight. Let's get Christopher J on here with us.
yeah, make sure you guys tune into Christopher J's show on Five Bananas on
Yeah,
Monday
please do
night.
watch this. He does a great job on that show, man. Great job.
Most
So
definitely.
maybe Tuesday or Wednesday next week, Christopher J, we'll get you on us, and you can come holler at us too.
Most definitely. But all right, guys, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that is another edition of Boxing Bananas brought to you by Fight Bananas, where we are crazy about fights. Make sure you go check out the Fight Bananas page. Check out the sponsors on there as well. You want to talk about any of the sponsors?
Oh, HKA USA. I'm still loving the gloves, man. Thank you so much. That's awesome. No, I'm not even lying, man. They're solid gloves. Let's keep it rocking, guys. HKA USA, veteran owned. Check them out.
Appreciate it, Chris J. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are